So this chapter really gave me a better understanding of gender identity and masculinity and femininity. So one thing that really caught my attention at the beginning of the chapter was actually doing gender. I didn't really know that you could do gender. I thought it was just what you are. I didn't realize that gender is so important. But so doing gender is basically how we display our gender. So hairstyles, clothing, our body language. But according to West and Zimmerman, they say gender is something that we do, and their research focused on individuals performing gender as it's described in society. And I think that has to do a lot with where femininity and masculinity come into this. But then there's also gender nonconformity, and that is a gender bending, basically, where if you were born a female but you rebel and go against social expectations, so you wear men's clothing, that society would notice, but it wouldn't raise red flags or anything about masculinity or femininity. Another thing that I was glad that I learned from this chapter was misgendering. And misgendering is a term that describes the process by which people categorize or refers to people's genders based on assumptions. And I know that I have definitely assumed someone's gender before, and I know that that's not correct now, and moving forward I'm going to not assume based on what I think they might be, and more focus on what they identify as. And then I also never knew all of the different types of masculinity. The one type that stood out to me was the subordinate masculinity, and that exhibits the opposite of those to be described in a dominant society. So basically that means that you can still be masculine while being openly homosexual and being able to be emotional. And then one thing that did not sit well with me while reading this chapter was how that they mentioned African American males are being constructed primarily through stylizing their bodies to solicit sexual encounters with women and to provoke fear in others. And that didn't sit well with me because I don't understand how that can be, how they can portray that as like an African American male's masculinity, but for a dominant white male, they could literally do anything and they'd still be considered dominant and the most masculine, I guess. And then I have been primarily aware of hyperfemininity. Growing up as a Catholic, you were raised to find a man, get married, have babies, and then take care of the babies. Be at home, take care of the babies, cook dinner, do laundry. Basically, that's how you're supposed to be in the Catholic Church. From my experiences anyway. I don't know if everyone else is like that, but from my own personal experiences, that's how I think of femininity. However, after learning about the other types of femininity, I have learned that women can be independent and have their own feminine desires. It's not necessarily based on how you're raised. It's more of your own personal preference, is what I've also learned. Even just growing up, I've learned that. And then lastly, I found intersex to be really interesting to learn because it's a gender term that describes a variety of conditions in which an individual is born with sexual anatomy that doesn't fit the typical definition of male and female. And at first I was like, what does that mean? And then as I continued reading, I learned that they can have 5 different sets of sex chromosomes. They could be XXX or XXYX and both XX and XY. I did not know that in the United States, people or infants that are born with this condition are usually they usually seek medical treatment, and they usually either surgically or hormonally sex the baby so they don't have as quick as possible, so they don't have gender confusion, because this society is gender segregated. I thought it was really interesting because I've really never heard of this condition before. So I'm curious to learn more about it. I think I'm going to do more research about it after this, but I do think that was the most interesting thing that we've learned so far. Thank you.